Hey guys, welcome back to more neighbor Karen stories. In this video, my neighbor kept breaking into my backyard to use my pool without permission. After catching her for the 5th time, I warned her I would call the police if it happened again. She just laughed in my face and said, "They won't arrest someone for swimming." Well, she was dead wrong. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, "Police tells entitled neighbor Karen to leave my pool. She decides to fight the cops instead." I should probably explain this first. I've wanted a pool for as long as I can remember. As a kid, I used to beg my parents for one every summer, but we lived in a place where the backyard was literally just our tiny patio. The closest I got was one of those little inflatable kiddie pools that start leaking after about a week. I would sit in it with a garden hose running, pretending I was at some fancy resort. When I finally bought my own house years later, I told myself, one day I'm getting that pool. Of course, real life does not exactly hand you a giant hole full of water and a diving board the moment you sign a mortgage. It took a few years of saving, dealing with other house projects first, and arguing with myself over whether it was worth it. But every time summer rolled around and I was sweating through my shirt just walking to the mailbox, I would imagine how nice it would be to walk out the back door and just jump into a pool. 4 years ago then, I finally made the big decision. I went all in, complete with a nice in-ground setup, simple but clean design, a good pump system so it wouldn't be a nightmare to maintain. I even put in a proper patio and a couple of loungers so it would feel like a little escape. It was easily the most exciting thing we had done to the house so far. The first summer I had it, I practically lived out there. Part of having a pool though is protecting it. The fence was a given. Where I live it's actually required by law, and I had it installed with a locking gate to keep out curious kids, wandering animals, and well, anyone who's not invited. Not because I'm some kind of stingy gremlin guarding my precious pool, but because it's basic safety and common sense. You don't leave a big body of water completely open, and you don't let random people use it without your say. Amen. And when I first moved in, the neighbor directly behind us seemed fine. A little chatty, a little pushy about how everyone around here shares, but I figured she was just being friendly. That didn't last long. Pretty soon, the little comments started, "Wow, must be nice having a pool, especially when some of us cannot afford one." Or, "You know, back in the day we all used to swim in each other's pools without making a big fuss about it." Curious when that was. At first I just kind of laughed it off, thinking she was being nostalgic. In case you were still somehow wondering, she was not. In fact, simply being nostalgic. The first time I actually caught her in the pool, it was early on a Saturday morning. I woke up, made coffee and went to water some plants on the back patio, and then I heard some splashing. My first thought was that maybe a bird or raccoon had fallen in, but nope, there she was in a one-piece swimsuit, floating on one of my pool lounges like she owned the place. I walked up to the fence and said, what are you doing?" She just waved completely casual and said, "Oh, you were not using it, so I thought I would just take a quick swim." I told her straight that she was not allowed in my yard and she needed to leave. She actually rolled her eyes at me like I was in the wrong here. "Don't be like that, it's just water." I was too stunned to argue much, so I just told her to get out. She grumbled, climbed out and left, dripping wet and tracking water all around my property as she collected her things at a snail's pace. I figured that would be the end of it. I mean, who gets told don't trespass after literally being caught and then keeps doing it? As it turns out, it is her. She is that exact type of person. Over the next couple of weeks I would catch her again and again. Sometimes she would be alone, sometimes she would bring her kid, and once she even had what I can only describe as a mini pool party with 2 friends, all of them lounging around like it was a public community pool. Each time I told her to stop. Each time she would act like I was the unreasonable one, saying, "You're so selfish, you're being dramatic, it's not hurting anything." I even heard her tell her kid, "Some people just don't know how to share." After the 3rd or 4th time, I decided to be crystal clear. I told her, "If I catch you in here again, I'm calling the police." She just laughed in my face, saying something like, They're not gonna arrest someone for swimming. I double-checked the locks on the gate and even added a chain, but somehow she still managed to get in. My guess is that she either hopped the fence or her kid squeezed through a gap and unlocked it from the inside. The last straw came one afternoon when I came home early from running errands. I walked out to the backyard and sure enough, there she was, fully in the pool, hair wet, sunglasses on, and sipping from a water bottle like she was at a resort. Her kid was splashing around and one of her friends was sitting on the edge dipping their feet. I did not even bother confronting her this time. I just went inside, grabbed my phone and called the non-emergency police line. I told them I had a repeat trespasser in my pool, that I had warned her multiple times and that she refused to leave. They sent an officer as soon as they could, and when the cops showed up I stayed inside and watched from the kitchen window because I knew she would probably accuse me of causing drama if I was standing right there. 2 officers walked through the side gate I had opened for them and I could hear one of them call out, "Ma'am, you're trespassing on private property. We need you to get out of the pool." Her reaction was not great. She laughed and said, "You gotta be kidding me. It's a pool, not some government building." The officer repeated that she needed to get out and leave immediately. She ignored him and kept floating. The second officer stepped closer now and told her, "If you don't get out right now, you're gonna be arrested." And that's when she lost it. She started yelling about how she has a right to use the pool because it goes unused half the time and that good neighbors share. The officer stayed calm, telling her again to leave, and she finally started climbing out only to suddenly turn around, spit at one of them, and then kick the other. I swear it happened so fast. 1 second she was just yelling, the next she was full on assaulting 2 police officers. They immediately moved to restrain her, which she fought like a wild animal, screaming about how they were harassing her and that she was the victim. Her kid started crying and that's when the chaos reached its peak. She was still thrashing while one officer was trying to put her in handcuffs and the other one was trying to calm the kid down. Eventually they got her under control, walked her out through the gate and put her in the back of the patrol car. I went outside then and one of the officers asked me to give a statement. I explained everything, all about how I had caught her multiple times, how I had warned her and how she ignored it. The kid's dad, apparently her ex, showed up a little later to pick him up. He didn't look surprised at all, which, well, probably says a lot. Several other neighbors had heard the yelling and came over to watch the whole thing, and a couple even told the police officers that they'd seen her using my pool before without permission, and that seemed to help confirm my side of things even further. In the end, she was arrested for trespassing, resisting arrest, and battery on a police officer. Those 2 last ones alone are no joke, and from what I heard, she ended up doing a couple of months in county jail. Since then I have not had a single problem with anyone trying to borrow my pool. In fact, most of the neighbors have been extra friendly, probably because they saw exactly how far I was willing to go to keep my peace. Honestly, I still cannot even wrap my head around the entitlement it takes to think that you can just waltz into someone else's backyard and use their stuff whenever you feel like it, and then to fight the police over it? That is something I thought I would never see, especially not in a nice neighborhood like ours, but hey, at least now I've got a pool story that has me opening conversations with people easily. And the next one is an absolutely crazy satisfying, brand new malicious compliance story that you don't want to miss. This one is titled, "Manager said I was useless at my job, and I showed him exactly why." And by the way guys, if you still enjoy these malicious compliance and Karen stories, then please don't forget to like the video and click that hype button if you see it to support my channel. Thank you so much. So this was about 20 years ago, so some of the dialogue won't be exact, but some of it is burned into my memory. At the time I was working in a toy shop and it was coming up to Christmas, so you can imagine how busy we were. No busier than that though. Each worker was given a specific section of the store to keep tidy and stocked. Mine at the time was what we called the boys' toys, all the action figures and so on. However, I was also the only person other than the managers who could process refunds, exchanges and so on, and because boys' toys was right beside the tills and the managers could be anywhere, no radios, the cashiers got into the habit of calling me for help. And it being nearly Christmas, there were a lot of exchanges, refunds and other things needing my intervention. Our store was franchised and we had a district manager, D, because he was kind of a D and also his name starts with D, who had never worked the floor a day in his life and he had some kind of business degree. He visited a few weeks before Christmas, came into Boys Toys, and for some reason that sounds really wrong, an hour or so before closing and got mad because it was messy and there were some gaps in the shelves. He refused to listen to my attempted explanations and stormed off. Next morning he was right there at opening time. When we had our pre-start meeting where sections were assigned, he interrupted our manager to say, "I'm putting myself with OP today. She clearly doesn't know how to handle the section, so I'm gonna show her what's what." There was an awkward silence for a moment before manager went on with the assignments. I kept perfectly silent. D trailed me to the boys' toys section and looked around. "Well, what's first? Or don't you have a plan?" "Well, first I usually— oh sorry, that's the Tills calling for help. I'll be back in a minute." Dealt with the Tills, returned, got halfway through explaining the first job, and then was called away again. By the time I got back it was 15 minutes into the shift and he had not done any work yet. I gotta give it to him though, he stuck with it all day. I finally managed to show him what we were doing and he schlepped up to the stockroom and down to the shelves half a dozen times, tidied the same set of shelves because kids love throwing things all over the floor, and watched as I was called away an average of 5 times an hour. I didn't usually keep track, but you bet your ass I did that day. He took his lunch when I did, 10 minutes late because of a refund. He didn't apologize, of course. I was too lowly for that, but the next morning at the opening meeting, my manager announced that from now on, Boys Toys would have 2 staff as a matter of course, and that the managers would make an effort to be more available to the Tills. And yeah guys, I gotta say, that was absolutely brilliant malicious compliance. If you have any malicious compliance to share of your own life, please feel free to post them in the comments. The next one is a feel-good story from r/Ripestories, our own subreddit, and it is titled "Gave my old bowling ball to a mother and her special needs son." Posted by user thefoxtrot86. Yesterday I went bowling with my best friend. He tries to bowl for the Special Olympics if he can each year, and while we were bowling, a mother brought in her son and took the lane next to us. The boy looked about 18-ish, hard to tell, but it was his first time bowling. He started out a little rough, but he kept getting better and better. He was easily scoring higher than me on his second game. I mean, I'm not good at bowling, but it's still fun to try. Though this kid had blooming talent and I kept encouraging him, I talked to this boy here and there and he asked me some questions about bowling and about my ball. I had 2 bowling balls with me, my old one and my better one I bought used last year. I kept the old one and brought it along just in case I wanted to switch up and use the other one, but I ended up only using it once. And by the way guys, is that like a pro bowling thing that you bring your own bowling ball? I've never heard about that, but then again, I think the last time I bowled was maybe around like 10 years ago or something. Anyway, I let the boy using the neighboring lane use it a couple times and he did okay with it. Later I talked with the boy's mom and told her about how my friend likes to bowl for the Special Olympics, and she seemed keen on the idea for her son. I asked if she was planning on getting her son his own ball. She was not sure. She had already gotten him his own bowling shoes and was planning to start taking him to the alley every week. So I scooted my old ball in its bag to her and said she and her son could have it. It was a ball specifically made of an older type of plastic that made it easy for new bowlers to use it better, and when I bought it used some years ago, the guy at the pro shop told me the plastic it was made of was discontinued and was well made for its time. My current ball is made of a reactive urethane and works better for me, so I really didn't need my old one anymore. When I gave the lady my old bowling ball, she was extremely grateful. She thanked me repeatedly and I even gave her pointers on how to keep the ball clean after use. Her son was pretty happy too, and they both thanked me for it. I don't know if she was a single mother, but I bet I just saved her a fair bit of money by giving that ball and bag to her. And now she doesn't have to go looking for one her son can use. And yeah guys, user thefoxtrot86 is an absolute legend. Props to you for being a good person. I love these feel-good stories. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. The next one is a malicious compliance story and it is very satisfying. I'm a senior electrical engineer in the industrial sector. I started work at a huge firm a few weeks ago and right off the bat my superior detailed what was expected of me every quarter. Among the requirements were 1 safety violation report a month. I thought okay, I could keep myself from effing up more than once a month. This is a large factory with everything from spinning grinders to steaming corrosives, so obviously OSHA is a big issue here, but this is not my first rodeo, so to speak. I generally know what I'm doing, so my first month goes by and I keep everything nice and safe. End of month, one-on-one rolls around. Boss makes it clear to my surprise that the requirement is for me to file at least 1 safety violation a month. Obviously, I inquired how one could go about controlling safety violations, as they are inherently accidents, and if I had any way to influence their appearance, I would obviously prevent them in the first place. But he just said I need to keep my eyes open, the violations will appear. Fine, so I kept my eyes open, but honestly, everything seems perfectly in order. Everyone else in my department were ticking off safety violations one after another, and I was nearing the end of months 2 with nothing. I'd go on walks looking for safety infringements instead of working. Something just seemed off, so I looked into the safety violations report Pexel, and I was just stupefied. This was a list of the most unbelievably inane infractions I've ever set my eyes upon. I'll give you some examples. Infraction: cabinet door was left open in the room. Someone could hit their head. Immediate mitigation: cabinet door closed. Future mitigation: add magnets to cabinet doors. There were countless other esoteric reports like unexplained puddle next to electrical cabinet or stack of cables on the floor. I simply couldn't believe it. These well-educated grown men and women just writing nonsensical safety violations on absolutely anything. I tried approaching one of the guys about it, but he just said to keep my eyes open, the violations will appear. They keep repeating it like it's a mantra and then change the subject. I thought this was ridiculous enough, but then one day a report came in about a ladder missing one of the plastic caps on its legs. Immediate mitigation: plastic cap found elsewhere and secured in its place. Now, I was the last one to use this ladder the day before, and it was perfectly fine, which led to my conclusion that this man was purposely sabotaging company equipment just so he can fix it and then write a safety violation report. I feel like I am in an episode of The Office. Everyone I approach about this just brushes it off. Maybe it's because I'm the new guy. Anyway, I could not show up to my second monthly evaluation sun safety report, so I went to a random grounding cable, slightly unfastened the bolt, took a picture, and then fastened it back in place. I wrote a report about it, and the OSHA guy commended me in person about my vigilance. Is this a department-wide grift? Are the managers unaware of this farce, or are they playing along? Usually this would be a huge red flag, but everyone is otherwise really nice and the pay is great. Anyway, ideas as to what I should sabotage next month are welcome. And the next one is titled Pro Revenge. So I was working at a major fast food chain. The restaurant was a franchise, and the franchise owner, let's call him Mike, owned multiple franchise locations across the city. Below him there was the guy who dealt with the day-to-day operations of the locations, let's call him Jeff. Now, at my restaurant there was the general manager, who I'll call Carmela, and multiple shift managers. I worked there for only about 4 months before I secured a better job. I turned in my 2-week notice directly to Carmela. I specifically stated a date in which my employment will end and had a short conversation with her confirming the details. Come my final week, I was scheduled the day before the date I had listed on my notice. Carmela, or Carmela, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, also went off on vacation that week and put a shift manager in charge of scheduling and keeping track of hours. When I showed up for work on my last day, I went to clock in and was unable to do so. Apparently, I was removed from the login system a day short of when I was supposed to be. No problem, I'll just record my clock times manually, and I worked my shift like normal while recording my clock times on a piece of receipt paper. At the end of my shift, I had the shift manager post the receipt paper on the corkboard, and he sent a message to Carmela to adjust my hours accordingly, since I couldn't clock that day. The total time I worked was around 5 hours. I took a picture of the receipt paper showing my hours posted on the corkboard, so I was sure I had proof that I was there. Come payday, Jeff was there, and I personally turned my uniform into him and picked up my check. I've always kept a very accurate record of my hours and discovered that my paycheck was short the exact amount of time I worked on my last day. I immediately brought it to Jeff's attention and gave him a rundown of what happened. He gave me his phone number to text him the whole situation and sent him the picture I took so that he had it written down. He told me he was gonna get it figured out and follow up with me. Over the course of a couple of weeks, I followed up multiple times with no response. I felt at this point the wait was getting ridiculous, so I got into contact with HR for the restaurant's corporate operations. I was basically told that since I worked at a franchise, there was nothing they could do and that I had to get in contact with the franchise owner directly. After failing to find contact info for Mike, I decided to go to the labor board for help. The labor board informed me that since they didn't pay me in full for the hours worked, I was entitled to back pay of 8 hours every day they didn't pay me up to 30 days. The labor board opened a case and immediately started attempting to contact the franchise owner, but to no avail. Eventually, they sent a letter to the franchise owner's home address directly, and I received a call from Mike on a Friday asking me why the labor board is going after him. I gave him a complete rundown on everything that happened, and he told me that this was the first time he had heard about the situation. We arranged to meet at the restaurant a few days later. When we met, we had a very open conversation on my time there. I told him everything about issues that were arising with managers all the way to not being able to clock in on my last day. At this point, if the labor dispute went to court, he would be looking at thousands of dollars in back pay due to how long it was taking to get it sorted out. We agreed to settle it for around $500. I felt on top of the world because my missing wages was only $45 or so. I visited the restaurant a few weeks later and found out that since the case was settled, a lot of things changed. Come to find out, Carmela and Jeff were hiding the case from Mike by destroying the letters and not responding to the calls from the labor board. They were also preventing contact with Mike by removing his contact info from the break room and refusing to make it available to employees. Mike fixed all of that by permanently posting his info in the break room and even set up a 1-800 number that he posted behind the register so that if any customers had complaints, they can submit a complaint to him directly. I'm not sure what happened with Jeff and Carmela, but I know the management was rearranged due to the issues I brought up with him in our conversation. Evidently, my new job was at a major drugstore chain that Carmela used as her pharmacy. A few months later, while I was working, Carmela came in and noticed I worked there. Shortly after, I found out from the pharmacy department that she started going to the pharmacy of another location. And the next one is a fantastic, brand new petty revenge story. It is titled, "My Best Friend Learned Why You Don't Steal My Snacks." So my roommate has this terrible habit of just borrowing my stuff, usually food. By the way, how can you borrow food? I will grab some snacks, leave them in my room, and by the time I'm craving them, they are boom, gone. So last week, I splurged on this giant bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. They were my special treat after a rough week. I put them in my room with a note that literally said, "Jake, I will end you if you eat these." Naturally, they disappeared the next day. Now, I'm not into yelling or drama, I prefer petty revenge, so I came up with the most harmless but glorious prank. So Jake has a desk job and hates getting up once he sits down. The night before, while we were hanging out, I snuck into his backpack and filled the entire bottom pocket with a bunch of loose Cheetos, like not even in a bag. I crushed them into Cheeto dust too, so it was extra messy. Next morning he grabs his laptop and notes like usual. What he didn't realize though is that he had a meeting with his boss. He reaches in his bag at work and bam! Bright orange Cheeto apocalypse all over his important paperwork and laptop. I got a furious text saying, "Dude, what did you do to my bag?" He was mad for a day, but then admitted it was fair play, and he also stopped stealing my snacks, at least for now. Petty revenge complete. Yeah guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to leave me some star emojis in the comments, and I will see you again tomorrow.